All right, I am so excited. We are actually starting multiplication, and then we're going to get to the good stuff. All right. But before we can, we have to learn about the properties of multiplication. You're like, what? Multiplication has properties? Yes, yes it does. And there are 3 major ones and 2 minor ones that you need to know. And these will help you to multiply and understand numbers better. So the first one is commutative. So what does commutative sound like? It's like commute. Your parents may say, oh, the commute to work was horrible today. Well, that's because it's going from one place to another. And we may think of this as fact families. So let me write one down. Very simple, 5 times 3. All right. So if you think about fact families, what would be the inverse operation, or not inverse? What would be the kind of like the inverse, the opposite? If you were saying 5 times 3 is the same as 3 times 5, right? 5 times 3 is the same as 3 times 5. Now we saw something like this in our addition, and it was something similar like, oh, I'm so confused, and you try to solve this side. But remember, the equal sign is like a balance. Both sides have to be the same. This side needs to be the same as this side. And with the commutative property, you can change them around. So 5 times 3 is the same as 3 times 5. They move, so they move around. The numbers move. That's why we have the car to help you remember. Move. And commutative. All right? And so you have commutative. 5 times 3, 3 times 5. So let's do another one. If we had 6 times 45. All right, 6 times 45. Okay, so what would be the commutative property of this? What would be the opposite? Like our fact family, that'd be the same as 45 times 6. So that's commutative property. Pretty simple. Commutative, they move around. So that's just it. When you see, and a lot of times you're going to see, okay, 6 times 45 is the same as blank times 6. What would that be? It would be 45. These are the easy, so just think commutative, they move around. All right, let's move on. All right, well, next is associative property. Now this one's a little confusing, but once you learn it, it's okay. So I think of parentheses kind of like fences. You want to take care of everything in the fence before you go outside and work with your neighbors or somebody else. And so it says numbers can be multiplied regardless of how the numbers are grouped. So numbers can be multiplied regardless of how they are grouped. So with this, we're going to think of the fences. But sometimes we can move our fences around. So with associative property, we say, instead of that, I'm going to still write 3 times 5 times 6. Now with this, here we were saying, okay, 3 times 5, that means we're going to do 3 times 5 first, because we have to do everything in the fence first. But let's move our fence around. Instead of doing 3 times 5 first, we may want to do 5 times 6. The answer is still going to be the same. And if you look, we have 3 times 5 is 15. So we'd have 15 times 6. And then over here, we have 3 times 5 times 6 is 30. And if we come down one more, we still have to multiply. 15 times 6, 10 times 6 is 60, 5 times 6 is 30, 60 plus 30 is going to be 90. So we have 90. So 15 times 6 is 90, 3 times 30 is going to be 90. So whatever way is easier. So with this, I have found, you know what, if we multiply these first, it might be easier for me to solve. 15 times 6 is a little bit more difficult than 3 times 30. So, but regardless of how you multiply them, they're going to be the same. So associative property, you can think about with these parentheses, with the fences, and we just move our fences. It's saying no matter how we multiply them, it's going to have the same product. Product, again, is the answer to a multiplication problem. So with associative property, you're going to associate with the people inside the fence first. and then you multiply. So that's just changing who you're working with first. Okay? And so no matter how you multiply them, they're the same. All right, so that's associative property. Associative property. Commutative property, they just change places. Associative property, that means the fence moves. Now let's go to distributive property. Now distributive property, think of it as distributive, like when you distribute things, like this newspaper guy, he's going to distribute the newspapers. So distributive property works the same way. So it's kind of like taking numbers apart. Now there's two ways to do it. There's two ways you might see distributive property. So I'm going to show you both ways real quick. So let's say 5 times 10, or 5 times 15. You might say 5 times 15 can be distributed like 5 times 10 plus 5 times 5. This is going to give us the same answer as 5 times 15. We're just breaking it apart. We're distributing it. Distributing the 10 and distributing the 5s. So we could do it, so if it's the same as having 5 times 10, if you had 10 plus 5. So we could break this apart and show you. Let me show you. This one could be broken apart like this. And this is the most common way you'll see it. 5 times 10 plus 5. So this is the most common way you'll see distributive property. Okay? So you're breaking apart these numbers here. So is 10 plus 5 the same thing as 15? Yes. So what we're doing is we're taking 5 times 10, right here, 5 times 10, and then adding 5 times 5. So I'll put these parentheses. You don't need the parentheses there, but it kind of helps you see how it works. 5 times 5. So is it the same thing? Yes. We're going to multiply the multiply a sum by multiplying each addend. These are addends. Multiplying the addends separately. So we multiply 5 times 10, 5 times 5, and then products. All right. So this is how it works. So 15 is the same as 10 plus 5. So then we're going to distribute this. Okay. 5 times 10 and 5 times 5. So let's see. 5 times 10 would be 50. And we'll go over that tomorrow. Actually, multiplying by tens. Plus 5 times 5 is 25. 50 plus 50 plus 25 is, of course, 75. Kind of think of quarters. All right? And then that's your answer. So 5 times 15 is 75. So we can solve this through distributive property. And this is really good with mental math. We're going to use this a lot in mental math and breaking apart the problems and distribute them. Okay? So that's how distributive property works. It would be the same as saying, okay, so it's like if you had a box that was 5 times 15. You know, it was 5 inches long here, 15 inches long here. We're going to break this apart. So instead of saying 5 times 15, we could say, all right, let's break this into 5 times 10 and 5 times 5. All right? So this is kind of how you're distributing it. They were 5 times 15 is the same as 5 times 10, 5 times 5. All right, so this is distributive property. And we're going to actually use this one a lot when we're using mental math, and a lot of things build off of this one. So knowing that you can take numbers apart, you can distribute them, 5 times 10, 5 times 5, is the main point of this one. Let's move on. Now the next two are the easiest to understand. So identity property, who am I? Is anything that's multiplied by 1 is going to be that original number. Okay, so let's say we have, and let's put an L here. It got covered up by the penguin here. Let's say we have, let's say 10 times 1. Well, if you have one group and has 10 pieces in it. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. One group of 10, how many do you have? You still have 10. All right? Let's say you had 332 times 1. You can do that in your head. What's 332 times 1? If you had 332 in one group, how many would you still have? You'd still have 332. So that's why that one's pretty easy. And then we have down here 0 property. 0 property, again, is easy. Let's say you had, so any number time, the product of any number and 0 is going to be 0. So let's say you had 0 groups of 13. All right, you do not have any groups. 0 groups of 13 is going to be 0. So 0 groups of 5,462 is going to be 0. So any number and 0, any number multiplied by 0 is going to be 0. Any number multiplied by 1 is that number. Any multiplied by 0 is 0. So it's just like you have one group of however many. There's going to be however many is in that group. And then you have 0 groups of something. You have 0. All right. So those are the last two. Now what we're going to do. All right. The last thing I'm going to have you do before we move on. And the last thing I'm going to have you do is the left side activity. So for the left side activity, you are going to write each one of the properties: commutative, associative, distributive, identity, and 0 property. You're going to write those down, and they're going to give me one example. Now, I do not want you to give me the same example as I gave here. I'm just writing in another example. So, commutative property, remember, they change places, like the car. 16 times 5 is going to equal 5 times 16. Associative property, 16 times 5, remember the parentheses are like fences. You're going to take care of everything in your fence or your house before you move on to everyone else. But you can rotate those around. So you can do, if you had 16 times 5, then times 9, you might say, okay, it might be easier to do 16 times and then do 5 times 9 in the parentheses. You can change which one's in the parentheses. Distributive property. This is the one where you break it apart. So you had 8 times 25 could equal 8 times 20 plus 8 times 5. So you're going to write another example that looks like distributive property. And then identity property. 52 times 1 equals 52. Any number that's multiplied by 1 is going to be that original number. And then 0 property, any number that is multiplied by 0 is going to be 0. So 320 times 0 equals 0. So that's what you're going to do on your left side. Have that ready for tomorrow. So that's it. All right. We'll practice this tomorrow.